BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
A good evening, it's 6:30, 6:32 if you're being precise, if you've got something in the oven that you need to check. Happy Wednesday, 3 days into the week. Only 2 days left. We're nearly there. How's it going so far? It's Louise on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire, and Lent starts today. It's Ash Wednesday. In about half an hour, we're going to be finding out a little bit more if our Sunday school lessons seem quite a long time ago, and if your understanding of Lent is a little dusty. But what we can remember, I'm sure, is the idea of giving up or going without. And actually, in recent times, we've heard more and more, and I think since COVID, actually, about maybe moving away from giving up something and embracing something new instead. But it takes a lot of willpower, doesn't it? And with everything else going on in the world, the headspace to embrace something new or give up something and not use our usual resources, like cigarettes or bad foods, etc. It takes quite a lot, and your headspace can feel quite limited. So where do we start? Well, thinking about this, I thought, it's time to activate Holly Matthews. If you join us on a Friday on the breakfast show, you'll know that Holly is our go-to person when a crisis hits. Holly, have you always been everyone's go-to person?
I think I might have been, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm a problem solver, and I'm here to chat to you guys about all things habits breaking, making, and all of that.
So what's your willpower like? Because I've got a really mixed relationship with the term willpower and also willpower itself. What are you like?
It depends. I mean, I think I've never really bought into the idea of some of us having a lot of willpower or not, because I think it's, even if we feel whatever we're going to call it, even if we feel like we have willpower, it always runs out because you only have so much motivation to do something in a short space of time. So it's always about not setting fantasy goals for yourself. Like, I'm really big on not setting the goals that we're going to then give up. We have to support the things that we want to do, because otherwise we'll set the goal. Let's say the goal is, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to stop eating biscuits, and that's the goal that we have. We'll get high off the idea of that, because then we'll think, oh my God, I'm going to be so much richer, I'm going to feel better, and we get high off the idea. But if we don't support the idea, if we don't put some foundations around that to make sure we keep it up, eventually the dopamine hit that we got when we wrote it down in our fancy planner, that will
you know me so well.
Yeah, that will wear thin. So we have to make sure we're supporting ourselves. So I wouldn't say willpower wise, I think I am very decisive and will give things a go, but just like everybody else, it wins.
This is the thing, but also it's your schedule as well. So I've learned with me that I need to, the phrase go big or go home. I do either of the two. And I figured out this year that I need to go in the middle. So I thought in February, do you know what? I'm going to just get some building blocks in place. And I did a big planner on my wall just for the month. You sort of think, you know what? I'm not going to change my life overnight. Know thyself. I've known where I failed in the past. So let's just build some building blocks in. Because I read about this thing called habit stacking.
Love habit stacking. It's my fave.
So, we can talk about that in a sec, because I don't know how to explain it, so I'm glad you know about it, because I'll leave that to you. But I realised that there are some things in the day where I do X, and if I just add Y on top of it, it builds up that way. So I did this grid just for February, and it was like, right, 2 litres of water, exercise, meditate. And I'm just trying to build those habits over the 28 days, and I was doing pretty well. And because I knew that I had a whole month of doing it, if I skipped a day, I didn't beat myself up and I didn't give up. Yeah. But then half term happens, and then you have visitors, and then everyone here is off sick, so I'm working like literally every other day when I'm not used to it. And you go back to your old habits of, where's the vending machine, as opposed to, let me just drink 2 bottles of water. So how can you get back on track when your good intentions have been derailed?
Well, I think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant and totally what I would recommend to my clients. And it's the first thing. So I've written down for you guys, I've written 5 R's that we can think about when it comes to this stuff. And the first one, you've hit the nail on the head, is realistic aims. Get real with yourself, be honest with yourself. If you know, when I'm doing this, I'm not going to do that. We have to be really honest with ourselves. And I think starting small and working up is a way better way of embedding it and making it part of your life rather than just, again, a fantasy idea. So in terms of that, when things change, how do you get back on track? Well, first and foremost, you're absolutely bang on when you say being kind to yourself. Compassion is always the antidote to this stuff, because the minute we start criticizing ourselves and being unkind when we miss a day or things go apart a little bit, the minute that we start being unkind, we we just slip into giving up and starting a new goal, getting a new planner. And so we go around that fantasy goal setting. So it's a really good idea to do what you're doing. And then what I would say is try to think a little bit ahead and almost have, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do. But also, if it goes, if there's a, holiday coming up, if I know I'm going to have visitors around, actually, or a birthday, I've got my
challenge, basically.
Yeah, if there's a change, how can you support around that? And that might mean prepping things in advance to support that. That might actually also just mean going, do you know what, on this particular day, depending on what the habit is, I'm just going to be okay with allowing myself to do the thing, depending on what it is. Obviously, if you're trying to quit smoking, it's probably not the best idea, but it depends what the thing is. If you are doing really well with the things that you've just said, the meditation, drinking your water and all of that stuff, and you have a day when you don't, I think you will get back on with it quicker if you're kind enough to yourself to go, do you know what, it's been really hard right now, this week's busy, it's okay, I'm back on track next week. I'm okay with that. I think it's more realistic to us as human beings.
Yeah. So that's sometimes when we're starting new things like habits. What about giving up? Because everyone I feel like has got a bit of a vice and we sort of go, I've got a sweet tooth. Oh, I can't go without the fags. Oh, da, da. And for Lent, which is why we're kind of talking about this, we're supposed to give up chocolate or sweet things or, crisps. You can pick something to give it up. Where does one start with giving something up?
Well, firstly, you choose what it is, and then we instantly go to, right, realistically, what is a realistic thing? If somebody said to me, and they came to me and they said, one of my clients said to me, I've put on weight, and we talked about things she was eating and all of that, and she said, right, I eat biscuits every night. I eat about 7 or 8 biscuits. I watch my programs. That's happening every night. Now, if she had come to me and said, I'm going to cold turkey quit the biscuits completely, I would have said, I think that's a bit harsh and unrealistic. Now, you might get away with it for a month, okay? So if you're just giving it up for Lent, you might get away with that. However, I think it's a better idea to think about a realistic starting point. So with that particular client, I said, okay, well, what about if you only ate biscuits 4 days in a week? That's 3 days, there's no biscuits happening. And we started there. So I think realistic first, then I would look at, I know you mentioned this at the start, but replacing the habit with something else, because the craving's going to be there regardless. If you're a person that when your program comes on, you're used to a bourbon biscuit, you're going to want a bourbon biscuit. So you need to give your hands, your mouth something else to do. We need something else. So my client, her idea was she knew she would get the craving. So on the days she wasn't eating the biscuits, she would give herself some fruit or some carrot sticks she quite liked. And she would give her hands something to do. So she said, all right, I'm going to paint my nails while I'm watching my program, or something else to do, because the craving's not going to go away, certainly not in the short term.
Yeah. I've just been reminded of this brilliant quote that I love from and I know you're like me, you love a good motivational quote.
Love it.
Francis of Assisi said, start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible.
Oh, I love that.
I love it. It's on my fridge.
Oh, that is a really good one. This is it. And it is always about building on things like that. And I think it's also really helpful, to remind ourselves, because when we hear giving up, we don't want to do it, do we? Our inner toddler goes, I'm not giving anything up. I don't want to. And we stamp our feet, metaphorically, maybe we stamp our feet actually as well. But we don't want to do it. So I think it's important that we have some way of reminding ourselves, what are the gains that I'm going to get by doing this? It might be money, it might be health related, it could be it could be lots of things. But I think it's important that you have that reminder for yourself of what are going to be the gains. You might want to put that somewhere you can see it. You might want to have it as something on your phone screen that reminds you of, why am I doing this? Because the minute you get the craving, your brain is going to try and convince you why you should just eat the thing, do the thing. It's going to give you all the reasons why. So you have to remind, but when we do this, we're going to feel like this. I'm going to have this. And I think a massively important thing is to rally the troops. Rally the troops around. Get your friends, get in a group, get in a WhatsApp group of biscuit giver-uppers or whatever you're doing, and get people around, because having that accountability is so powerful. It's the reason, when we have Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, and all of that stuff, they're always about community. It's why I have my life coaching community, the Happy Me Project, because in order for us to stay on track, we need that accountability, because we're a bit sneaky, really, aren't we, to ourselves? We will say we'll do the thing, and then, behind closed doors we won't. But if there's somebody holding us accountable, I mean, that might just be me, Louise, I'm sure.
No, Holly, I'm laughing in recognition. Don't you worry. Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to follow with that. So I think having that accountability is really good. Having an accountability buddy, somebody you say, look, what are you doing? If it's a Lent thing, or if it's just in general, I want to give this up. How can you have that support? Because on the days when it feels really hard, you're going to need to lean on your community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, it takes a village, doesn't it? Just go back then to the habit stacking, because I tried to have a go at explaining it, but I don't really think I did a good job. You explain in your professional manner what habit stacking is. You're trained.
I keep it nice and simple, really. It's when I do one thing, I do this. It's like that. It's essentially and I always like to, when it comes to anything that we want to build into our lives, I always like to bring it back to the day-to-day, the mundane habits, the daily boring stuff we do, because that's where we win. We don't win in the kind of sexy goals of the big goal setting. We actually win in what we do every day. So if I look at my world and I want to put some habit stacking into it, I think about, what am I already doing? So let's say the things I guarantee I'm doing every day. I'm making a cup of tea, right? That is probably 8 times a day. Yeah. A cup of tea is being made. So I know however long that takes to make that cup of tea, there's a bit of time there. It might be 30 seconds, I don't know how long the kettle takes, probably too long. So let's say we've got a minute there, 2 minutes for the kettle, get your cup out and all of that business. There's a tiny bit of time there where maybe you could put something in there that would be habit stack. So again, because I do this with my clients, one of my clients was looking to just move her body a little bit more. She wasn't looking to become, some major fitness influencer. She just wanted to be a bit more active. So we looked throughout her day what she was doing and where she could be more active. And one of them was when she made a cup of tea, she was going to run on the spot. She had 5 things she was going to do. She wrote them next to the kettle, run on the spot. She was going to do a plank while the kettle was going. She could pick one each time. She knew that she had a stool in her kitchen, so she was going to lift the stool above her head 5 times. I mean, really simple stuff, but it's essentially, when I do one thing, I'll do this.
Another. Yeah.
When you're brushing your teeth, what else could you do? You could be doing something that's positive there. I used to. I don't always do it as much as I would like now, but I used to always do squats while I brushed my teeth. I look ridiculous.
I was going to say, what a mental image, Holly. Tell me something as well, because I know there's lots of people listening that are struggling at the minute, because they tell me. It might not be on air, but they'll tell me privately, especially people who've gone through loss like you have. And in a couple of weeks, I'm planning, and I keep saying this, but it keeps getting bumped, I am going to do a special programme on grief. Yeah. And I've said this to you many times, I don't know how you've done anything of the last, and I was going to say 3 years, but it must be 6 now, mustn't it? How long is it?
It's coming up, yeah. So for those that don't know, me and my husband died of brain cancer. Coming up to 6 years. This is the 6th year, which is absolute. Like, grief time is a different time. Like, grief time feels like 2 minutes ago and 300 years ago. And yeah, I mean, I've got 2 children, for those that don't know. One is nearly 12, one is 10 on Friday. It's absolutely ridiculous that they are that grown up. And we've walked that walk through that whole time, and it absolutely has not been easy, and it still isn't, and it's such an important topic that we talk about, because certainly as British people, we're rather rubbish at talking about this stuff. And I'm not. I'm actually very open about this stuff, as you know, and I think, we will all experience it. None of us excluded in that. We will all experience grief in our lifetimes.
In fact, I was going to say, before we get on to what I was going to ask you about that, one of the reasons we've always got on so well is because we're a bit weird, aren't we? We can't really do small talk at parties. You don't want to ask about someone's holiday. We're very similar, that we'll meet and be like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? How did you get over it? How are you? Like, we go straight into the really intense conversations.
Yeah, what's your deep, darkest trauma and ambitions? Like,
yeah, exactly.
We're fun at parties.
Yeah, so that's why we've always, I think, probably magnetised, what's the phrase? We've always been attracted to our friendship's been like that. And not everyone can do it, but sometimes you just need the question, don't you? Sometimes you think you can't talk about it, but you want someone to be like, come on, how are you really?
Yeah, and I think that's always, in grief terms, I think that's always a hard thing to say, because it's such it's such a personal experience. I think that's actually the key, is that how I explain grief to you, somebody else might find abhorrent. Like, they might not like how I talk. I'm very blunt. From the minute that my husband died, I never once said, I've lost Ross, or Ross, we've lost Ross. I never said, because that didn't make any sense to my brain at all. We haven't lost him, he's dead. And as horrible as that was for me to say, I needed to hear it to understand it, because my brain still, even now, when I say that now, I still go, how is Ross dead? That doesn't make sense. Now, for somebody else, they might not be able to take that. They might only be able to say the gentle words. And so I think it's so personal, but I think that being around somebody who's going through big loss, big grief, people get scared to ask. They get scared to be honest. And I think it's because they think, if I talk about it, if I mention their person even, then it's going to upset them. Let me tell the listeners right now, and I'm sure most of them will get this completely. You talking to me about my dead husband isn't making me feel sad. If anything, one, it's the avoidance of it. But two, I'm sad because he's dead. I'm not sad because you've talked. I was already thinking about him. I was already doing it. You didn't remind me.
You had sort of momentarily forgotten. Yeah.
No, it wasn't like that. So I think that's important. But talk to your people honestly. Be real about it. Be really honest. It's uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's far better to be open and allow people space to talk about their person as well.
Because I remember the week that he died, I remember sending you an email, and I sat down, I was like, I have to tell her all this stuff about grief, and I'm like, it's not like it's happened to me, but when you've had a close bereavement, you realise that grief is very odd and very lonely. And I remember sort of sitting there, like steam coming off my fingers, typing this email to you, and I sent it, and I was like, I could actually only ever send that to Holly, because anybody beyond that, it would feel intrusive, and I knew you wouldn't see it like that.
No.
But there's always that fear of making a faux pas, isn't there?
I think there is, but I think if you know your people right, the go-tos for me, if somebody is listening and their friend, their family member is going through big grief, the things that you can do pretty standardly are make them food and take jobs away from them that they don't want to do. Yeah. Just turn up. They won't ask for help, because that's what we do as human beings. We're like, oh, no, I'm fine. I don't need you. And just turn up with some food for them. Do them a food shop. Go and turn up and say, I'm taking your washing. I'm going to wash your clothes. I'm going to iron your clothes. Do the stuff that you really, because when you're going through big grief, especially if it's somebody close, like a husband, a family member, that's someone living in your house, it's really hard to function normally. So I had people, my thing is, the minute that I'm stressed out, I just don't eat. It just becomes, and when my husband died, it felt absolutely ridiculous to eat. It just felt like, Ross is dead and I'm sat here eating a sandwich. That seems inappropriate. And that's what I felt. I just felt really inappropriate. That doesn't seem right. So I just didn't want to eat. Now, obviously, that's not healthy. That's not good. That's not going to help me out. So I had friends that would just turn up, or order me a Deliveroo. It would turn up and it'd say, your food's outside. I'm coming round. I'm going to sit with you till you eat it. And I know that might seem a little bit harsh. I can take that. You're not doing that for everybody. But I think it's really the basic things of humanity. We actually start to struggle to function, especially in those early stages. So I think that's always a really, people often message me and say, what can I get someone's died? And I'm like, nothing.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the time. Yeah.
I don't want a present. I don't want somebody to buy me flowers. My house was inundated with flowers, which was very lovely and well intentioned, but it gets lost in the noise. If you're really genuinely wanting to help someone, I think it's get around them and ask them honestly, what can I do today? And don't kind of cut through the nonsense of I'm fine, and allow them, just do the stuff for them.
So, Hol, if anyone's listening this evening and they're like, I like the cut of this girl's jib, no nonsense, Geordie advice. How do we find you? Because you've got a book out that's done pretty well. Are we allowed to talk about? Is there a book 2? Is there book 2 coming?
Well, there might be. I can't really say for definite, but there might be.
But there's definitely a book 1, right? And that's based on the Happy Me project.
Yeah. The Happy Me Project, a no-nonsense guide to self-development. It's 60 chapters, but don't fall off your seats. They're 4 pages each. You flick, You pick a chapter. It's meant to be read like that. I want you to write in it. I want you to use the tangible, proper ideas that you can do at the end of each chapter. And that it actually got to number 1 in all of books on Amazon, and even won an award, which was absolutely very exciting. So and I also have a life coaching membership, which if you are somebody who's listening now, especially if you're thinking about, the habit stuff and things like that, and you want to just have that network, I work with my members all day, every day, and there's always a drop-in space for them to come in to do the work that they need to do, and so that is also something that you could do. So we've got the Happy May Project membership. We've got the book. I've got a podcast as well. And I'm also heading, I know this is a bit far for your guys, but if you want a road trip, on April the 22nd, I'm up in Newcastle doing a Restival. And Restival is a whole day of well-being, self-development. And we have some celebrity guests as well. We've got Lee Brennan from 911, the boy band. 90s boy banders will love that. And we also have a Big Brother winner of, I think it was 2005, but it was probably the last time I watched Big Brother, and Anthony Hutton, who's going to come and do a talk as well. So we have some male perspective as well as female perspective, speakers, activities, loads of good stuff. And you can find all of this by going to /all my stuff. I hang out on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all the things.
You lost me at TikTok, Holly. I'm still pretty much figuring out Instagram.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
Holly, it has been a pleasure, as always, to chat to you today. Thank you for coming on and giving us so much of your time. I feel renewed, like to get back on the Better Lou horse, and lots of love to the girls.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. And I look forward to hearing from you all that have been listening this evening.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Holly Matthews, live from goodness knows where in her house. I don't know how she finds the time. It is just coming up to 5 to 7 news on the way.